Hey everyone, Mr. Kevin here from HumboldtCraftworks, and today I'd like to talk to you about gluing up wood panels. Yeah, wood panels like this. Yeah, wood panels. Wood panels can be a little bit of a trick for some people, but once you get the hang of it, it's real simple. So whether you need to glue up a tabletop, a raised panel, or just need a wider board for one of your projects, I'd like to show you the techniques that I use to make gluing up raised panels fun and exciting. And flat. Flat is the whole key right there. All right. I love gluing up panels. This is one of my favorite things to do. So with a little bit of patience, some glue, a couple clamps, you can make panels flat too. So I'll show you the way I do it, and we'll go from there. So let's get to it. All right. And here we go. Yeah. Alright, so the first thing, el numero uno, very important when starting any project, like I'm going to build some panels or whatever, you need to know what your final dimension is. So if your final dimension is 10 by 20, make sure you oversize your panel and make it like 11 by 25. For most of my projects, I glue up a panel and I leave it about 1/16 of an inch fat, 1/2 inch wide, and about 6 inches too long, so I can cut off the planer snipe. Because my planer snipe's about 3 inches, and it's just what I do. If I have a project where the panels are wider, like this panel here, wider than my planer, it's a lot wider and it's a lot longer. It's really long. Panels this big, I usually, most doors are like 3/4 of an inch thick. I make this about a 32nd of an inch fatter than that, and then I belt sand it. And there's a little video on how to belt sand wood right over here if you don't know how. But just remember the final dimension what you need. So if you need 10 by 20, make it 10.5 by 25. If your planer doesn't snipe, then you can make it a little less. I always make it a little larger and a little longer than I need, just in case you have a check on the end or you find something wrong. Like one of these boards right here has a flat check in it, and I didn't realize it till after I glued it up, but I made it long enough so I can just cut it off. So that's important. Know your final dimension and make the board that you're gluing up wider. All right, let's go to number two. Number two, wood prep is key. So the whole key to having a nice flat panel, see that? Flat, is preparing your wood. So if you don't have a planer, a joiner, a big table saw, whatever, if you don't have a planer, find somebody that does. You can actually straight line these things with a router. I'll show you, hold on. You have a friend with a joiner, you could take a board and join a flat edge. See how it says straight edge jig. Here's another jig. I have a whole thing about jigs over here. Anyway, you can take these and set it up, clamp it on the board, and route it. The whole key is to make sure that you have a 90-degree edge and that they're parallel. Okay, you can't, if they're all cattywampus and not square, you're going to have problems. Make sure the panels are flat, nice and square edges, and the thicknesses of all the boards are the same. So if you have a planer, plane everything before you glue it up. Don't leave like this one's 3/4 and this one's 13. I'll just glue it up. Now make sure they're all the same thickness. That is key to making a very flat panel, because if you want panels to come out flat and not warped and not cupped, that's the key right there. Wood prep. All right, I'll do a whole video of how to make wood flat, but that's for another time. All right, so what are we at? Number three, clamps. You can use any kind of clamp you want. The medium duty clamps. I have a whole show on clamps. It's over here. This sounds like an infomercial. So clamps, and there's bar clamps. As long as you know the little technique I'm going to show you how to do, and you follow a few rules, you can use any clamp. Most of the time in my business, I use these little tiny clamps because I have piles of them and they're easy to grab and they're right there. And pads, you don't need pads. I have pads on everything. They usually fall off half the time, but I like pads because they grip a little better. So for all these panels that I have here, and for the little video thing I'll show you in a minute, all I used was these medium duty clamps. I use them all the time. Unless I'm gluing up a big table or something that's 1.5 inches thick, that's when I'll use these bar clamps here, the Jorgensen bar clamps. I got all sorts of kinds over there. Clamps. There's a whole video on clamps right here. Alright. Number 4 would be glue. I use, and they're not a sponsor, but I use Type-On. And I use this for everything, Type-On. It's waterproof. It's exterior, interior glue. I glue up everything with this. I'm not really a glue snob. It's just I use Type-On 3. I used to use Type-On 2, and this is more waterproof, and that's why I use it. I think it's FDA approved for like butcher blocks and things. If you glue up butcher blocks. Anyway, that's what I use. 4th thing you got to do, or you got to think about, is using cauls to make wood flat. I don't really use cauls. The caul is when you take a board and you put it on top here like this higher, and you get another one underneath, and you clamp them together to make your panel flat. Cauls are really good for super wide boards. So if you're gluing up a tabletop and it's 1.5 inches thick and it's 4x8 or whatever, however big it is, cauls would be a good idea to keep things flat because it's hard to maneuver thicker material. But when you're dealing with stuff that's 3/4, 1 inch thick, it's pretty easy just to use the method I'll show you here in a minute. And yeah, alright, so whatever number that was, 5. Using face frame clamps to help hold the ends flush. That can help out. Sometimes you get a little craziness and your wood at the very end is kind of wavy and crazy and you want to get it as flat as possible. Also not a sponsor. I have these face frame clamps. Just clamp on the end. So if you can't get the ends to be all like nice and purty and flat, use face frame clamps at the very end. It'll help hold things together until the glue dries a little bit and you can take them off and use them on another board. Alright, number 6 is before I glue up anything, I usually put down some cardboard so I don't get glue all over my table, and a couple of sticks. And these are about 1.5 inches square. And the reason I use these is because it's easier to clamp the panel when it's up in the air. You set them on there like that there, and then the clamps don't get in the way. I'm clamping it up. See how that is? It's not anywhere down near your surface, and it's easy to manipulate and maneuver. So little pieces of wood under your work works pretty good. Holds it flat. Alright, so those are a few little tips and tricks. And now we're going to go into how to glue up the panels. Yeah, it's kind of fun. And the method I use is the pinch method. Alright, so let's get to it. The pinchy finger method and a few other things. So here we go. Alright. Important thing when you're gluing up panels is to make sure once you have your grain the way you like it, mark it how you want it to be. I got the grain, I don't know if you can see that grain right there. So these two match. So I'm just going to do this. That way when I glue them back together, when these line up, I'll have the grain exactly the way I want them. So marking's it's a good thing. Yeah. Get everything all lined up. You're going to start in the middle of the board, and I use pads on my bar clamps. This little bar clamp, I don't really need lots of pressure. These are small boards. You want to make sure that your bar clamp is fairly square. It's pretty close. And the reason you want to do that is when there's glue on here, if you're a little cockeyed, feel like this, and you go to tighten it up, with glue on it, it will move. When you're glued up, it's going to be slippery. So if you're off to one side, let's do it like this. See how it moved? See how it just moves? Okay. I'll do it one more time, because I got time. If your clamp's crooked like that, and you go to tighten it up, see how it moves? It's just going to move your piece. Start in the middle, start as square as you can. You can feel the seam right here. I usually push the high side down, give it a little snug. Alright. And then you work your way out. So this is a small board. We're going to go one in the middle and two on the ends. And you can use more than that if you want to. And then I pinch. So I'm pinching with my fingers. I'm manipulating the board up and down. The pinch method has to do with pinching your boards like this. So whatever side's high, I push down and I just snug it up. I don't make it super tight. And I'm going to come over and do this side. Same thing, try to keep your clamps as square as possible and as centered as possible in the wood, so it's not all up on one side or down on the other. Up on one side, down on the other. Same thing. If it's off, you want to push the high side down, or you want to lift the low side up. Just pinch with your fingers. And you can feel over here, so this side's a little high. I'm going to lift up here, tighten this clamp up a little more. Work my way down over here. Feels good. Pushing down, clamp it up. Okay, and there you go. The board is flat. Alright, so add a little glue and finger it. Because I'm a fingerer. I'm a fingerer. I'm giving you the finger. Yeah, I know. Silly me. And you can use a brush, you can use a roller, you can do whatever the hell you want, really. I just do this because it's quick, fast, and easy. Okay, both sides are glued. I give it a little wiggle because it's just what I like to do. Wipe it on the apron. It's very important. Okay, now remember, keep this as square as possible. Square. Even on the wood, not on one side or the other, right in the middle, and snug. Doesn't have to be perfectly tight. Now see, I wasn't paying attention and I tightened that thing up and this side's higher. So run my finger through, I'm going to push this side down. There we go, nice and flat. Okay, it's not super tight, it's just snug. And this time we'll go over here. These are about a foot apart, maybe a little farther. Well, that already feels good. So the whole thing feels good. So usually when you go to mill your panels, if you buy rough lumber, let's say you want the drawer fronts to be 3/4 of an inch finished, I buy the rough lumber at 7/8. That gives me a chance to face join it and join the edge, rip it and plane it, and to make it nice and flat and smooth. And that's really important. And if you don't have a joiner or a planer or any of that, find somebody that does. I don't know. Alright, so there we go. Flat and flat. A little twisty here. Snug. So go back and feel all the joints. Or the joint, but on different places. Sheesh. One of these days I'll learn how to talk. Okay, and then we'll check it with straight edge. And that's pretty good everywhere. Over here. Yeah. And there it is. Glued up. Then the last thing you're going to do is just scrape it with your trusty little scraper, and you just lift up and go underneath. And this mahogany is terrible. Some people like to leave a little glue. I don't. I don't use water or sponges or anything, which some people do. I lift up underneath these to get the glue out so it doesn't leave an iron mark from the clamp. Okay, you just wipe it down a little bit, flip it over. That's about it right there. And that's that. You're ready to go. Woo! Well, thanks for spending time with me and letting me blab at you about how to glue up panels flat. I appreciate everyone who's subscribed, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And once I get to 100, I'm going to give away a butcher block. There's a little video, butcher block giveaway. So subscribe and you can win a nice butcher block, end grain butcher block. There's a whole video of it right here. All right, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it. This is Kevin from HumboldtCraftworks out here in beautiful Humboldt County, California. Thanks for watching. You have an awesome day, and thanks for watching Woodworking with Mr. Kevin. That's me. Oh my goodness gracious. Are you still going? Oh dear. Flippy flapper. Hello. Bye.
How's that? Was that any better?